What's up, fam? Welcome to the Flow State Outdoors podcast.
And I just can't live without you.
What do you mean? There's fucking 2 kilos in the boat.
Listen to me every time.
This podcast is brought to you by Hustle and Grind Coffee Co., Rod Armour, Evertread, and Castmag.co.
Co-host, Queenslander now, man.
Yeah.
Residential address is in Douglas.
Fucking Mexicans.
Where are you from? Queensland.
Queensland.
Yeah,
You shit on every other state other than Queensland.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes like you're nice to the NT. That's about it.
Yeah.
I like the NT.
Yeah. Have you hunted up there?
Yeah, Buffalo.
Yeah. We've been live for a bit, by the way.
Oh, we're music. So,
Yeah, so you have hunted up there.
Yeah, last year. Ayden went 2 years ago and I went last year and we went and hunted buffalo. And yeah, it's beautiful over there. Like the whole environment is insane, and the endless possibilities of hunting and the pure land mass that you have access to.
Yeah. Just hunting like arnhem land and stuff? Or,
Yeah.
That'd have been sick.
So yeah, we had traditional elders there with us hunting and stuff. So
Yep.
that was a really cool experience, and just sitting back and sort of listening to their stories and their family's traditions and whatnot. Sort of really connects you.
So you hunted with like local people?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
to have legal access over there, we were hunting there with a guide.
Yep.
So yeah, to get legal access there, you need to have a traditional.
permission,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it was. That was a really great experience, and just purely hunting, like a water buffalo with a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
So
they're fucking big.
Huge.
I've had a few run-ins. Like I used to hunt pigs and stuff with dogs and shit.
Yeah.
And had a few wild run-ins with big buffet.
Yeah.
They're sketchy. A mate of mine while I was up there, I wasn't on the trip, but he got his dog like opened up the front of its chest. Like
Wow.
a big bull buff did.
Yeah, right.
Ripped his chest plate off, the dog's chest plate off, and opened up his chest. Lived.
Oh wow. Okay.
Felt fucking scary. Have you seen people throw coins at him?
no, but I've heard, and apparently they've got such good sort of assessment as to where their horns start and finish that they can hit them in midair.
20 cent coin, like people, there's like videos floating around of people, not many, but flicking like 20 cent coins at bull buffs in pens, and they're like knocking them with the tips of their horns.
I believe it. Like it's
right.
when you said like, have you seen them and how big they are and stuff?
Yeah.
They're pretty intimidating at first because you just see this massive animal that's huge, and they've got this like way of just
Just want to be closer.
they've got this way of just like staring into your soul, and they'll just like, without sort of breaking pause, they'll just like look at you and maintain that eye contact, and they're sort of wondering what you are, because where they are, it's obviously so remote that they don't know what a human is. And then it's just amazing that you've got to sort of maintain your composure and everything, and then obviously it's be able to sneak in.
Well, when you're 30 foot away? Something like that.
30
that's
metres.
Okay, 30 metres. Yeah, right. That's fucking heavy, man. Like that's very close to death. Like,
Oh yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it turned to shit pretty quick.
Well, that's it. Like flicking the switch and they're like on you.
Like pigs or something might fuck you up, but a buff would most likely do permanent damage or kill
Having
you.
seen them like fight and the way that they clash horns and stuff, it's like a sonic boom.
When they're real riled up, like. And like, have you seen them in like rut and stuff? Like,
I've seen
definitely.
2 big bulls fighting, and like, they hit heads like on their base plates, and it was just like, sonic boom. It was massive.
Oh, it's like 2 semi trucks, just like.
And they're pretty cruisy when they're walking around, sort of just like, like they're. And going back to their horns, how they're so big, for such a big animal, like some of them probably weigh a ton. They're pretty quiet cruising through the bush. Like they actually like don't knock over every tree like you'd think they would.
No.
But then they turn that switch, and when they want to kill each other and fight, they're just like crazy, and it's amazing how quick they actually can.
And
move.
equally, if they want to get somewhere quick, it's just like everything just parts. Like
everything just fucking moves.
Oh, you see saplings that are like 5 inches across, just disappear. Like,
Well, you get them like when we used to hunt with dogs and stuff, and you'd get a pig like in a swamp or just like up on a bit of high ground of a night time, and you'd go run to the pig, kill it and whatever, look up with your head torch, and there's like a bazillion eyes of like buffalo, like they've all just come into the noise, and they're just sitting there looking at you, and they're not like it's pretty safe, but they like it's fucking eerie.
Yeah,
Oh,
for sure.
Because they're huge. Yeah.
What's the thing? It's,
And they are curious. Like they're very
like in terms of big game hunting goes, like there's a lot of stories out there about buffalo sort of being, you know, the really dangerous one, and they're the ones. But it's like scrub bulls, 100% is what's gonna.
They're fucked up.
Oh, well, especially like
reason.
with the bow. So
They're like the bull sharks of the diving.
literally, like they just if they
fucked
like
up.
it's not. Yeah, so a bit of a story. Like I when I was hunting, so Big Country Safaris was who we went with, and when we were hunting with them, we were with one of their guides, and we stalked in, had this like really sick scrub bull, and it was stalking him, and at first he was about 60 metres away, sort of feeding on like an angle, which would have led him to like go past me at about 25 metres, which with the bow you've got to be pretty close, but at about 60 metres out, he just changed angles and pretty much just started like feeding straight towards me, and I had like no cover anywhere around me, and so this scrub bull is just like pretty much walking straight in, and then I've knelt down in the grass, which is sort of like knee high, because I'm like, well, at least I can sort of lower my profile.
Yeah.
And then he's just like continued to walk straight up to me, and pretty much walked into about 15 metres, and like Ayden's videoing off to the side about 50 metres away, and we had like a backup rifle.
Yeah.
But, you know.
It was pretty funny because like I had utmost confidence that James was fine. Like with the bow, we're trying to obviously maintain like this sort of, you know, we don't want to be seen obviously, and we're just part of the environment.
Yeah.
And I had the guy with the rifle behind me saying, "Should I shoot it? Should I shoot it? Should I shoot it?" I'm like, "No, do not shoot it." Because then that scrub bull he's going to know that
James.
something is wrong. And like he's facing
Barreling,
10 metres away and looking straight at James.
Yep.
So he just held true and was all good.
But he just like walked in there into about 15 metres and just like looking at me, and I'm like, oh, please don't eat me.
I bet you
please.
wouldn't have been able to pass like a breath of wind through your arsehole, man.
Oh.
Like dilated.
I was just like, if there is a God, please help me right now.
But that's what you sort of do it for, hey? Like that rush.
That rush, for sure. Even like getting in on buffalo, like we, there was a few times that we were like not circled as such, but just had like young bulls that were like really inquisitive come in, and, you know, like there'd be 4 or 5 bulls at 50 metres just sort of looking at us and, you know, kicking up dust and stuff. And they're not saying, oh, I'm going to come hurt you. Like they're sort of being inquisitive and sort of trying to show their dominance and stuff. But then you take 2 steps forward towards them, and they run 2 steps back. Like they're just equally as scared, but it's pretty cool experience.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Just having something so powerful that could do a lot of harm if it wanted to.
Yeah, well, I listened to a Joe Rogan podcast when he podcast Adam Greentree.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the trip he did to Arnhem Land.
Yeah.
Like no food and shit.
Yeah.
Living out of a backpack.
Is that sort of what you blokes did?
You can go.
We were fortunate enough to have a car like drive us in and had like a bit of a base camp, and then just went from there every day.
Yep.
But next time we go, we're thinking of doing the lease that this Big Country Safaris has is like 100 kilometres like expanse of remote bushland. So we're basically hoping that next time we can sort of get dropped off with a helicopter, have just everything that we need on our backs, and then hunt and be able to take whatever meat and just, you know, live for potentially a week to 10 days and walk that stretch of creek all the way down to where we get picked up eventually. So
that sounds fun.
for us, that's the goal, I think, and it would be pretty cool.
So walk to a pickup spot. So get dropped up whatever, and then get picked up wherever.
Well, so we've done that that type of backpack hunting where you're literally carrying your whole life on your shoulders a couple of times in New Zealand, which is, you know, just incredible to know how little you can sort of survive and live off for like quite an extended period of time. I guess with doing New Zealand, like the biggest thing is like you've got to have a lot of extra gear for like, you know, just the mountains and surviving in like heavy rain and all that type of stuff. Whereas with with the NT, like your gear is probably more like ultra lightweight and sort of like hammock style, because you know, like
it's fucking hot.
Oh, like
you're
it's
not gonna
so
freeze.
You know, you're not going to freeze to death. Like even if it starts pissing rain, like it's gonna be like 25 degrees and the humidity is 100%, so you're probably like sweating. You know, and then but like it should be like a really cool experience, and just the endless amounts of wildlife and stuff that you see on those type of walks, because you're going into places that very few like it's sort of one of the last spots in Australia really that like is sort of untouched. You know, like obviously people do get in there. Like I'm not going to say I'm going to be the first human walking these spots, but it's like it's very, very remote.
You feel alone, or you feel like a pioneer.
Yeah, and once you start doing those type of hunts and even like, you know, hikes and stuff, like you sort of get addicted to it. Like knowing that you might be the only human being for like 50 k's.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like
Yep. Especially like even like further east, like Eastern Island land and even Central Island land, and towards the south it's a bit more like the locals there don't really like white people that much, but towards the coast more like it's proper and remote, eh? Like you get bit by a snake or something there, you're fucked.
Yeah, a lot of trouble.
For us, it was like a 7-hour drive. So we landed in Darwin, drove down to Catherine, packed all our gear for the next
so you went to the
week.
bottom end?
Yeah, and then cruised all the way down and back around. That took like over 7 hours of like wheel clearing tracks and stuff by the end of it. And that was because we were the first people back in there for that year.
Yeah.
But you know, you set up camp and then you're waking up every morning with wild dogs and dingoes howling, and then you got buffalo roaming through camp, like it's proper remote, pigs wallowing in the creek like 50 metres away where you're getting your water every morning. Like it really is just sort of, it puts into perspective just how sort of out there you are. Like none of these animals sort of know what a human is. And it's like...
Does that make it, like are they still, someone's pull up at the front, are they still like spooky?
They are, because the second they smell human, like you've got to still obviously hunt like downwind and make sure
still do all the proper shit.
But it's more like with buff in general, I've sort of got the sense that they're quite like inquisitive. Like they'll see movement, and most bovine species, like even scrub bulls, actually they're pretty good at seeing movement from a long way away. But they sort of just, because they're so big, they don't really have natural predators as such. It's more they see movement and they're sort of curious as to what it is. But the second they get that wind and your human scent, they're gone. Like even if they've never smelt humans before, I think they've just got that like innate instinct where it says like, this is wrong. It's not, like we don't shouldn't be here. But speaking about sort of like natural predators, one of the coolest things we would have seen out there was on the first afternoon, we heard this sort of ruckus in the big dry creek bed, and there was this little buff sort of screaming its head off, and we had never heard this noise. It was pretty crazy.
Like
have you ever called them in like that?
You can call them in, It was sort of like that, but this was like more of a prolonged scream.
We're like, what is that?
And like, we had a bull at 20 metres, and it started like really like getting aggressive, and we were like, shit, like it didn't know we were there, but it was just like agitated. And sure enough, it ran down to where the cows were, and they were trying to form like a ring around this calf. And there was about 3 or 4 wild dogs, like good sized dogs or dingoes, trying to grab it and stuff. And it was doing laps, like it'd run 100 metres, and that's what the dogs wanted, was to separate it from the cows. And then in this moment of chaos, they'd try and grab its neck. One would try and grab its tail and like swing off it and stuff. And it was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, that's neat.
And this is all inside like 100 metres. And we just sat back and sort of watched it. And then the cows would sort of be like, oh shit, we've got to be there. And the bull would run in and sort of create like a laneway through the scrub, just clear everything and clear the dogs off the calf. And then surround it again. And for like 10 minutes, it'd be a stalemate. And then, it just sort of
push the dogs and then get in on the calf.
It's like wolves on elk and
that's
shit.
right. Wolves on bison.
That'd have been like
stuff.
epic to see. Did you film it or anything?
Yeah,
we have a little bit of footage, but it was the grass, because it was coming into June, July. They just had their wet season. It was drying off. The grass was pretty high.
And that's the thing. Like the baby calf was only probably like 2.5 foot, 3 foot high. Like it'd be like less than a month old, like pretty newborn. But it just kept breaking away from them. Like the especially the cows kept trying to form that sort of protective circle, and the calf was just like, nah, go on, and starts screaming again.
Well, it's freaking out. It's got dogs hanging off it and stuff, dingoes, and
that'd have been neat
and just going,
and obviously the dingoes know like what to do. Like they're regularly hunting the buff there, so like you'd see 1 or 2 like try and start pushing the mob like off the calf, and then at the same time 1 or 2 is trying to actually get in on the calf to like make it break, sort of thing. Like they're like they're obviously doing it a lot. Like they'd be a main food source up there, as well as roos and pigs and whatnot.
And like where we were hunting was this sort of dry escarpment country, so I think the traditional owner that we were with actually told us that a lot of the pigs had sort of been eaten out by the dingoes. That they were preying pretty heavily on them, because normally in some areas, like up here in North Queensland, they eat a lot of roos and things like that, wallabies. But the pigs, because they can't get to the swamps where they're a bit safer and have a bit more sort of leverage, a lot of the piglets just get cleaned up. So we didn't see too many pigs actually. But then because there was like less of a food source around, they were eating the buffalo, which you'd think they'd probably stick away from just with that danger of the horns and stuff and being big animals. But they were pretty desperate, but it did seem like they had it.
Yeah. Late dry season's pretty savage. Hey, like you see some pretty cool shit then, like when there's no pick around.
Well, everything's just on that water.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like all the creeks are drying up.
Yeah.
There's a couple of pools. It's sort of like, you know, when you see in Africa when like all the water's drying up and like all the herbivores are going into the water and the lions are just sitting there like, I know you're going to come to me eventually. Like, it's like
the crocodiles and their furs.
That's it. It's like, why am I running after you? Like, you're just going to drop dead 3 feet from the water. Like, it's the same over there. Like when you see them, we've got friends there that hunt regularly.
Yep.
You know, and they just send photos of like everything in condition, like everything's conditioned in that sort of October and November before the wet, and you're just like,
they're fucked, eh?
Oh, it's like, how are you walking around? It's like a skeleton with a bit of.
Yeah, you see dingoes that you just think like you're dead, but you won't lay down. Type thing. Like they're just, it's insane. I spent about nearly 6 years up there.
Oh wow.
I didn't do heaps. I did a little bit of sort of hunting with dogs for pigs for like 2 years, probably 2 or 3 years. And then I lost my main dog and sort of got right into the fishing.
Yeah.
And then
it's hard to fish.
Well, it's one of our good mates is a barra guide over there, and he.
Who's that?
Ben Carroll.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So he's like one of our real good mates.
He's a legend. Like he looked after me, and I went over there and helped film like a little bit of a promo for his fishing, and it was easy to film because like the action is just insane.
Yeah.
Like you put a lure in the water and it's basically like a fish on. But we were catching like as a bit of an introduction. I'd never caught a barra, and a few of the other boys hadn't caught an NT barra, so. We'd gone over there and he's like, all right, we'll go and catch some rats, as he calls them. Anything that's like under a metre is a rat. And he's like, we'll go catch these rats. So we're pulling like 50, 80 centimetre barra out in like a 2 hour session. Put them all back. And then he's like, all right, you boys ready to go and catch some, you know, the big girls that we're after. And, you know, the next few days were just insane. Like he calls it like jungle warfare almost, where you're in these tight little creeks.
He fishes a lot of places that are like, because it sounds like you were fishing in runoff.
Runoff. I was there, Ayden was,
so
I think
March,
it was
April,
March,
May, So you're fishing like, I know most people should know what it is, like floodplains flooding fresh water into the saltwater systems and coming out. And there's these little coastal creeks that only flood sort of in that time of year. And you go and you push up, work out the tides, and you tie up to one side of the creek. I know exactly what creek you're talking about. I'll talk to you about it after the podcast. I don't know him, but I know of him. Like I know about what he does, and I've seen him heaps. I've been in the same creeks as him a heap of times and stuff. But that creek that I think you're talking about is like
flipping the bird as you go past. Like, get out of my fucking creek.
That creek you're talking about is basically that, like thumb on spool and big fish in tight country, like 2 meters, 3 meters deep, and what 5, 8 meters wide.
Yeah, about that. It was pretty like tight.
No, it's not.
Different.
Completely
I'm pretty sure I'm onto the creek.
Completely different creek.
But it was insane seeing like, you know, and he would just like read the watercolor and you know all this sort of stuff and be like, all right, get casting. Like we'd been casting the whole time, but he's like, no, really like target sort of those little nooks and crannies. And then sure enough, one of the boys pulled out like 1.5 meters, which was his biggest fish by miles and stuff. The other one caught like plenty of high 90s, and I'm just sitting there trying to film every cast and catch all this like insane action. But it was pretty insane sort of experience.
How do you find the run and gun filming?
At the time, I was pretty new to it because I'd never really filmed anything fishing. Like it was mainly all hunting, sort of growing up in wildlife. So I was probably a little bit under-equipped, but looking like back at it now, it's like if I had a gimbal or something like that, it'd be insane. And like the action sort of, when it's that much action and action-packed, it's sort of hard to like miss anything. Like you can be just filming and it's pretty cool. Like the emotion comes through.
It definitely does. I find the hardest part when you get films like that where everything just works, which is normally not the case when I film. Like as soon as you do like that curse of the camera, like you pull the camera out and then you just don't get fish.
There was a lot of casts between like
it's fucking
and not getting anything, but we were probably fortunate at times that the GoPro was running and stuff, so
it always
you would at least catch like the action and then quickly chuck your camera. You'd film there for like 40 minutes of them just casting, and they wouldn't get a bite, and then the second you put that camera
to
down
get a drink of water or some shit.
Exactly
bullshit,
right.
Man.
And Ben kept being like, no, grab your rod and have a cast. I'm like, Ben, I'm not missing this one like hookup potentially. So it was pretty cool though.
Nah, I was gonna say bloody. Oh no, I was gonna say when the fishing or hunting whatever is good, you forget to get the B-roll you need. like all the ambient shit.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you get back and you check your footage and got all this awesome stuff.
Yeah.
And then you got to go, oh fuck, I've got to go back out to a similar location and film just birds and
Wildlife
trees and
and-
shit.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's where with
linking
hunting
footage.
it's real difficult because you almost got to film to edit and know sort of what the film, like as soon as you
Yeah.
start getting a bit of footage, you've got to sort of have in your head how this is going to pan out and sort of progress as a story and try
Yeah.
and tell that storyline. And then obviously doing that when you're under 30 meters from a deer potentially, like it's just there's so many added difficulties because
Yeah.
you're trying to like film and it's hard to get
Yeah.
B-roll and jump out in front or to the side.
We got
because of
two
deer.
blokes walking in on a deer or on a kill
Anything, yeah.
for anything, okay?
Yeah. Well, that's like a lot of the time. Now it's like you've got. We're trying to like. Generally, it's just the two of us hunting, and like
Yep.
you know, we're trying to imitate one person over the shoulder. But then we've also got like two cameras set back like 50 meters
Yeah.
behind us that we've both set up before we've even started that stalk, and like one's covering the stalk in. And then the other one's covering like what we think the deer or pig, like where it's going to walk. And then like half the time you look back at that camera and it's like walk perfectly, but then it's taking 2 steps out of frame just as you
Yeah.
shoot it. And you're like, oh, perfect. Like, you know, whereas if you had someone else there, but then like if you had 3 people there, you know, it's infinitely
Yeah.
harder again to actually get what you're trying to shout.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it just adds that extra dimension.
Frankie's running the fuck.
Yeah. Lapdog. Yeah, it just adds that extra.
Rennie would have stopped patting him, so he would have been like,
Yeah.
oh, next person.
Back on you, Rennie, mate. But it's certainly like, you know, I can't even tell you how many stalks we've blown purely from like, you know, the extra time that it takes in, you know, making sure you get that B-roll
Yeah.
halfway through a stalk because you're like, oh, quick, stop, that looked sick, and you quickly do it again. Whereas you,
Yeah.
that's 10 meters of stalking that you could have gained. And then
Yeah.
plus like, oh, we need to capitalize right now because it's behind a bush, but you're like, you know, you're stuffing around being like, oh, is my lab mic on? And like,
Yeah.
you know, just like all that
Yeah.
type of stuff.
I find it's the same as, like, very much the same as fishing, man.
Oh, for
like, you
sure.
don't get as many fish or as much fishing done when you're filming.
But I
Well,
think-
they're both so instinctual, like especially with
Yeah.
bow hunting, it's like, oh, the wind's good, I've got to move now. And like
Yep.
you capitalize, you make that 20, 30 meters potentially in
Yep.
a minute. Whereas sometimes you're sitting there like in the sun for 3 hours and you can't move because the deer's like aware.
Yep.
And it's a good time to get your B-roll, but it's midday sun. And then the second that sun starts dropping for the afternoon, the deer gets to its feet, he's sort of walking away, you've got to close the gap.
Yeah.
There's no time to sort of be like, hey man, can you just run back and get that little
that
clip?
shot.
Like the golden lighting looks
Yeah.
awesome, but you know, we've like adapted and sort of learnt a lot over the years.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Maximize B-roll when you can, and then
Yeah.
you know, like having a bit of a story and a bit of plan. And I think like the more you take the shots, like the
Yeah.
you know, a lot of the time it's replicating similar shots and similar angles, and you sort of think about new angles and new places to put a camera and you know, like all
Yeah.
that type of stuff. And it just, I think it just becomes part of the process.
Yeah.
Like
Yep. Have you seen
part
much of... Sorry, you're right.
I was going to say part of the flow state. Just
It is, though. It is, because, like, I feel like I haven't done any stalks or anything properly. Like, I've hunted with rifles, but never really done much bow hunting. Shot them, but never
Yeah.
properly. That stalk, like, might take you, 6, 8 hours or something like that. And the rest
we're not even going
probably.
to start telling stories about long stalks.
But do you feel like it doesn't feel like that long?
oh, it's
Yeah.
it's
It's like-
literally, especially like up north here, we've been hunting chittle deer pretty regularly, and like I've just started a guiding business with it. But with chittle, I've got this process now, which is
Yep.
we've hunted them for nearly 10 years, and it's sort of, once you find them in the morning, it's normally really difficult to get in on them unless they like walk straight at you and it's a bit of an ambush situation. But after that, it sort of becomes this waiting game where
Yeah.
you're just waiting for the wind to pick up. Like during the middle of the day,
Yep.
it sort of blows a lot more true from 10 till sort of 4 p.m. So you could
Yeah.
be sitting off them within 100 meters for hours and hours and hours. And then the second that everything goes right and sort of the cattle move off and the deer bed and all this stuff happens, it's like, all right, instinct kicks in. Now I've got to make my move.
Yep.
And yeah, that
So you
hours
spend,
that
like,
you've
the
been
morning
just
finding them and they're on their
working
feet.
out
We've joked so many times, being like, why do we even, like, you know, this recent hunt, we're getting up at 4 a.m. Like we were guiding 2 hunters. We'd get up at 4 a.m., cook bacon and egg brekkie, have coffees ready. They'd wake up at 4:30. That we'd be finished and everything packed by 5 and we'd be on the road going
Yep.
hunting, right? And then you'd hunt from like 5 and just say you find the deer at like 7:30, you then just sit off them. Like these guys are rifle hunters, so it was a bit easier. But like with the bow, generally we'd like sit off them at 200 or whatever, for until just say 10 o'clock, where they've sort of bedded, rechange their bedding because they change as the shade shifts across the sky.
Yeah.
So they change their bedding again, and then you're like, righto, perfect. This is my time. The wind's right. He's in a good spot. Let's go in. But we've so many times just been like, why don't we just get up at 9? Like, why don't we just get up at 10? Like, the wind's going to be good, like it's going to be hot as shit. But I mean, it's going to be hot as shit. I'm going to be out there anyway. Like, we know where they're probably, like, we've hunted this place for 10 years now.
Yeah.
Like, we know where they're probably going to end up in bed anyway. It's just like, what would be nice? A sleep in.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
especially like doing like consecutive days.
Oh, well,
like,
that's it.
It
like,
burns you out. Hey, like, and there's so many similarities I'm finding now that like talking to you and sort of since I started sort of having a look right into the sort of Australian hunting scene the last sort of 12 months, I suppose.
Yeah.
There's so many similarities with that and fishing, because like fishing is the same. You get up at like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, you're on the water by daylight to catch a fucking bite window at 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
Like what for?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But then I feel like the whole like the shit with that dingoes on that buff calf, like you miss out on that shit.
For sure. Yeah,
and I feel like that adds to the whole like I don't know. I watch a lot of like I've been watching a lot of like Meat Eater.
Yeah.
Like Stephen Ranella's stuff,
Yeah.
and I've read one of his books,
Yeah.
and I like his take on it.
Yeah,
Because a lot of
for
people like obviously like cop a lot of heat. Hunters cop a lot of heat.
Definitely. Yeah.
But I feel like if like there's a right way to do it, and I feel like Steve Ranella, like,
He paints the picture.
That's the best.
Like,
that's
he
what I was
sells
trying
it to the audience. Like he explains what a lot of hunters, I guess, struggle to say, and in the sense of it's like, the kill is like the final product.
Yeah.
And even then, like a lot of us now, there's an ever shifting environment, and that's I guess what we're sort of doing with our cooking stuff. But there's like an ever shifting environment of like, you kill something, whether it's a fish or like a rabbit or a deer or a buffalo, and then like you take the meat afterwards, and then you cherish that at home and you share it with your family and friends.
Exactly.
And like, there's infinite process in prep, like researching, preparing your gear, getting fit, getting ready for the hunt, like planning these hunts.
Yeah.
You go out there, you spend all day, for multiple days, and then hopefully you get something at the end of it.
Yeah.
And then, you really cherish and appreciate, like, if it's a trophy animal, you might put it on the wall. If it's a meat animal, like, you're taking it home and you're going to cherish it, with family and friends, like, in endless roasts and,
and the meat's like organic as well.
Oh, that's right.
Too.
Yeah,
like, it's not like some steroid-ridden shit you buy from
Well, that's
Coles,
right, yeah.
subpar. And like, I feel, because I've eaten a fair bit of game meat over the years, like, if you don't eat game meat for a while and you start eating like store-bought shit and then you go back to game meat, it's like yuck until you start eating more game meat again.
Just like, I think it's, and a lot of that, I think it's just like how you cook it too. Like we rarely buy red meat. Like we don't really buy it anymore because like I hunt for wild pork, like down in New South and Vic, like we were shooting goats and stuff, so we don't really need to eat lamb. Like we shoot a heap of deer, so we're getting the venison from that. Like do a bit of spearfishing now that we're back up in North Queensland. And we know people with boats sitting in the room. So hopefully do a bit more spearing, but even then like doing a bit down there and stuff. Like so we sort of had all the bases covered, I guess. Like and I mean you don't like there was a stage of 7 months where I literally the only thing I bought from the shops was chicken because I didn't like I had goat, I had pork, like I had venison, like I was making all my own salamis, like minced all our own stuff, like processed our own stuff. And so like you don't really need to.
I keep making fishing references, but it's exactly the same for me as well. Like I don't buy fish, and I trade fish for shit like that. Like
exactly,
I do.
It's like, commodities.
Yeah, it is. It's like old school, like primitive as fuck.
Yeah, it's like, I'll give you 2 kilos of snags if you give me a kilo of trap fillets.
Yeah,
like but that's how it should be. Like that's like rather than going down to the shop, like that's a lot of rural. That's how rural communities still operate. It's like you come help me fence, and I'll like give you.
I feel like there's a lot of like goodness in that too. Like actually like conversing with someone making trade, like it's primitive as shit. I know I get right down and deep into that sort of stuff. Like I do
build relationships. Like, it's about networking and like friendship, and it's more about like, and even then like it's also about just connecting. You're still connecting with the food that you're eating. Like it's not just oh yeah, cool. This is like some salmon that I bought from the shop, which tastes great, but it's like I know exactly like they can tell me the bombie that they shot that coral trout off.
And the story behind it and shit,
Yeah, they can tell me about the shitty day that they went cray diving and got that cray. Like, I can tell you about the deer that I made sausages out of. Like, like it's that too. Like it's the the story that comes by and the process and sort of the respect that comes through
and
food.
It's the experience of the whole thing. Like back on Stephen Rilla's stuff, it's like he spends an hour and a half long film and kills the thing at the end of it, or the whole film goes and they don't get the shot.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, is like tying it back
and it's
in.
still way worth watching. It's almost better to watch that
and that's where the
to
way
understand more
he portrays like his cooking is such a vital part, is which we've sort of made the shift recently with like our cooking stuff that we're doing, is out of 100%, 1% of our hunting we love our hunting, but realistically we shoot one deer one day out of 100.
Yeah.
And then for the rest of the 99 days, it's eating backstrap, eating the ribs, eating, the mince, eating...
So as much as you can pack out.
Literally.
Much.
Like
Do you find that hard, just sidetracking a bit, but packing out in summer? Or even winter here, like it's fucking hot.
Well, I carry, the backpack that I personally use all year round is designed for like very heavy backpacking. Like it's got a titanium frame. Like it cost me $1,300, put it that way. So the backpack that I use is designed for carrying heavy loads for backpack hunting. So when I bought that for backpack hunting, but also for carrying out like a lot of meat. So whenever I do hunting, it depends how much everything's bruised up and how much is broken. But like generally I'm taking out like both back legs, the ribs. I love the heart. I've started taking tongues because I love eating tongue. And then, back straps, if the front legs aren't too banged up too, and then I'll take them out. And it depends. Like if it's a small, like, if I've shot like a 40, 50, 60 kilo, like pig or goat or like a doe, like you just carry the whole thing out in one go.
Yeah.
If I've carried, if you shoot like a bigger chital stag or like a buck or something like that, you might bone it out in the field, or you might, carry it in sections. But like, I mean, even now, like it depends on how big the properties are. You can get your car pretty close to, you get your car a kilometre away. Like it's only a 15-minute walk. Like boom, boom, boom,
It's
boom.
just, a process. Like the second you fire that shot, whether it be bow, rifle, whatever, it's just the second that animal's down, you're trying to get the guts out as quick as possible. And just processing that meat, like that takes priority. And then from there, the quicker you sort of can do that and like get the hide and skin off, get everything cooling down, especially up here in North Queensland where it's pretty hot and tropical sort of throughout the year. And then into like a cool room to hang, all that sort of stuff. Like it's not going back to camp and then having a beer and the animal sitting in your backpack or the car.
I know what you mean.
And then people say, like game meat, so, it smells weird and it's got a weird texture. It's like...
You're not meant to cook the shit out of it either. A lot of people cook the shit out of it.
Exactly right.
And then they wonder why it's tough and dry.
That's it.
It's lean as shit.
Well, that's right.
And that's just a basic principle. Like you shouldn't be cooking meat if you don't understand that.
And that's I guess what we're trying to target. Like a lot of people just take the back straps and then they might take the back legs and they mince them. And it's
or
just
dog
like
meat or something.
That's even worse. Like not worse. Like I guess at least they're taking it and utilizing it. But like like I was saying before, like. Man, tongue's awesome. And like, heart's awesome. And like ribs are awesome. Like necks, like for slow cooking, front legs for slow cooking, like, like all that type of stuff. Like there's so much, if I can get one person to take out one front leg, well, I've done my job. If I can get one person to take out the heart and just take like a little bit of extra meat that they were just going to leave there. I mean, it's going to get utilized by foxes or wild dogs or dingoes or wedgies or whatever. Like it's going to get utilized. But like, I'd rather you go home, cook it up for some fantastic meal or cuisine for your family. And not only does it portray hunting in a great light because, might be sharing that with someone that's a non-hunter and it allows you to have that discussion over a meal that sort of opens doors. You also, like you're taking more of a resource or taking away from a resource and making it more sustainable, like in doing it, like actually bow hunting or rifle hunting or whatever, or even spearfishing rather than just like buying it from the shops. Like I think there's a lot of benefits that comes out of from just like, taking one extra. If everyone took one extra front leg, well, that's a lot of extra stuff that you can do. And it
doesn't detract from the experience. Like, it's a bit more hard work and stuff.
Like,
but
it'd be sort of a little bit sad at the end. I feel like I always feel like you feel for the animal a little bit, but then you pay it. Respect.
You definitely take a moment, like in paying respects for the animals that you hunt. Like you've taken a life at the end of the day. Like it's not like as many. We've killed quite a few things in our hunting career, and like it's still it's like it. Yeah, that relationship with death obviously changes, but like you always be taking an animal.
Natural.
Yeah.
Really.
Oh, and that's where, without a doubt, bow hunting or rifle hunting, spear fishing, any way that animal dies sort of ethically by a human hand is so much nicer or more peaceful, like from what I've witnessed. Like if I shoot something through the heart or lungs, it's got max 10 seconds before it expires. Like it might move 2 steps, it might move 10 steps, depending on sort of if it's inspiring, expiring, whatever. But then you compare that to what you see in Africa in the Serengeti where... and what I've seen
getting that
here,
ass chewed out while they're still dying.
That buffalo calf, like if it got caught, like do you think they're going to be like...
They'd already be eating it while it was still alive.
They're going to start eating its rump end or like its arse end. I'm going to say arse
end.
end.
Man, I've got a rack of questions in my head.
Or in
that whole fucking bad. Sorry, keep going.
You flip the coin and then it's an older animal and it's, a dry season and it can't get, and its teeth are worn down, it can't get that fresh pick and it virtually starves to death. Or gets stuck in a boggy water pit and it's just,
I'll go on that one first, like the question. A lot of people push back and say trophy hunting, let's not talk African like lions and dumb shit.
But even then, like, keep going.
Like, sorry, maybe not dumb shit. Happy to be proven wrong. But like, let's just talk like bull elk.
Yeah.
Big bucks. Like, the meat, like the old, they're not going to be like as tasty.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, or as good a meat. But what's your take on, like, people say, oh, you're taking like a beautiful animal, like it's high in the genetic pool, like it's giving really good DNA, stuff like that? Or are you like, you know what I mean? Like,
I feel like I could answer it just from what I've experienced recently with guiding is we're basically, like, I'm getting people that pay to come up to North Queensland from often Victoria, New South Wales, around Australia. I get international inquiries. And their goal, without doubt, is to come up and experience the countryside. But at the end of the day, like, they are paying for this beautiful sort of animal with antlers, most likely to go on the wall. And that doesn't necessarily... And, that I consider them a trophy hunter. I consider myself a trophy hunter. But that doesn't mean that I can't be a meat hunter, someone that loves wildlife, respects wildlife. Like, the amount of footage I've got of, snakes or kookaburras eating snakes, kangaroos drinking from dams, just all this random stuff that I'd never see from sitting back at the couch and sort of not participating.
They're the main people that give their opinions, those kind of people anyway. That
meat is literally, if most people take it home with them, if not, it comes back with me. So every bit of, meat is utilised. And then I live off it. And for anyone saying that, an old chiddle deer isn't going to eat well as whatever, it's like I beg to differ because I live off it 365.
It's not going to be terrible.
It's like, come hang out with us.
No,
I bet
prepare it.
It
comes back to
it's like
meat prep.
Like I've shot like rutted up red deer and bucks and stuff in the rut, and like a lot of the smell is actually in the cape. So once you, like, because they piss on themselves, literally. Like, it's like, hey, I'm the big
so do
dog.
bulls,
like,
so do cows,
like
so do
that's
steers.
it. Like, so do
pigs piss on themselves and roll in it.
That's right. Like, so like, it's all about the process. Like, it's all about, so like, if you can cape them and not get actual hair, like, because it's the hair that stinks. So if you can be like sterile and not get hair on the meat, which you should aim to do anyway, then you don't get like bacterial translocation.
Let it breathe. Like, don't chuck it in a sweaty pack. And all this sort of stuff.
And then, if it is like I shot one buck that was like, I did all the right things, and it still tasted like, it wasn't rutty, it was more just gamey. And I was like, cool. And I was just like, there's 30 kilos of sausages. Like,
there's always something you can do with it.
There's always, or I could have been like, oh, there's salami, or there's like, put it with hamburgers, or put it like, you probably got to do more work with it. Like, certainly, like, you can't just cook it up with a backstrap, and like, it's not going to be something that I'm going to give to someone as an introductory. But for me, like, I was like, no, it's like, once I'd turn it into like, fennel and chili sausages, like, I had people lining up to get them.
And sort of coming back to the question a little bit, where, like, so what? In my opinion, anyway, I'm not like an argumentative sort of person, but if someone goes out and does it as a trophy hunter, and their mission is to sort of get that old animal at the end of its life and something that they can put on the wall and tell their kids about, and they, for me, the only thing is, as long as they do it legally and respectfully and ethically, that's all that matters to me. And like, in my opinion, that involves taking the meat. Like, there's people out there that don't, but as long as like that sort of is done legally and ethically and all that, like for me, it's, why not take the meat? It just adds to that full circle sort of approach of it all.
Well, there's no reason not to. You've done all that work, spent your whole day, 2 days, 3 days.
Unless you're like allergic to the meat and you literally can't harvest it. But
you can give it to somebody.
There's that many people
I know
that
vegetarian hunters that take meat. Like, they'll
to give
to people. Like, so I know vegetarian and vegan hunters that actually will still butcher out an animal and take meat back and give it to family and friends because there's
Yep.
people that want it out there.
Yeah.
But I guess with like the other side of trophy hunting, I guess with the comment before about like
what about? I'll add a bit more context. Like, I mean, taking an old whatever buck, just say, or letting it live and continue to contribute to the gene pool because it's obviously got good genes because it's that old and big, versus taking that animal, and instead or targeting younger, smaller animals.
Like in terms of
sorry, you're right. I was just going to make an example, and I can't remember the name of them. Those big white rams in Alaska.
Like Dale sheep?
That's them. That's them. Yeah, that you get like there's only like a handful of permits given out a year.
Yeah.
And they've got to have a certain
full curl
on the horns.
or like 8 rings. Or
that's
like,
where
both rings.
America's ahead of us in Australia.
I feel like Alaska's conservation
everything's
is really high.
backed by science, no emotion. It's backed by a biologist in the field saying, we've got this many surplus rams that need to be taken. Let's generate profit to then go back into conservation.
Then managing,
like obviously.
In terms of the question regarding genetics, so I'm a veterinarian, so like so in terms of
this is helpful.
You're like, my dog's been itchy for weeks. I've been itchy for weeks.
Not just a dog.
Yeah.
Jump up the spot quick.
It's like we'll tackle that one after. So in terms of like we manage, so I do a lot of cattle work, so we're managing genetics constantly in herds, right? So one of the slowest ways of introduction, like population, so like for like population genetics moves at a very slow rate. Like we're it's constantly improving, but like you're seeing very slow progressions. Like, a farmer's lifetime of work, just say 40, 50 years, they might get only like 2 or 3% better in herd genetics in that time, just through natural selection, right? And these natural selections, like they intervene by doing like artificial insemination and embryo transfer and all that type of stuff, trying to rapidly improve genetics because they're stealing the best semen from like, the US and bringing it here and then putting it in their cows, and that's how you see rapid progression, right? But in terms of animals out in the wild, like they don't get that. They're only getting that, the herd natural selection that's going on. So it's happening at a very slow rate, but it's still happening that if you imagine like, you've got a buck that you or an elk or, chittle deer that's 6 or 7 years old, right? So it's at its prime of its life physically. And so what it's done is it's actually been passing on, just say at 4 years old, it starts breeding, right? What's going to happen is it's going to breed at 4, it's going to breed at 5, it's going to breed at 6, it's going to breed at 7. And then eventually it goes over its peak and it starts going backwards. Right? But it started breeding for 4 or 5, 6 years old. So just say its contributions to the genetic pool is 0.01% better than its dad. So what's actually happened is by shooting that buck rather than a 2-year-old for me
at a depreciating age. Is that what you're saying?
Or just shooting him like in his prime, even in his prime, right? Like rather than shooting that buck instead of a 2-year-old, because that 2-year-old's actually
that's right.
That just slapped him. I've had enough.
You're getting serious.
There's hand gestures going around everywhere. So that 2-year-old, just say is his son, he's actually 0.001 better than his dad, right? And so in shooting, like you're better off shooting, if you want to improve genetics, you're better off shooting that 6-year-old than shooting a 2-year-old, right? Because you're going to be progressing the herd. But like, if you want to progress in hunting, like you're better off actually shooting older animals, but then also culling selectively. So like culling for traits, whether it be, antler formation or, like.
How do you know that's the right thing for the species?
It's hard to do that. That's where like, I think as hunters, we should probably be taking out more hinds too.
Yeah.
Because more hinds or females because
sorry, I'm not savvy with
that
all
just a lot of people, especially you see it like up here where people are guiding flat out. So we'll shoot one stag and a hind, and that's trying to keep that 50-50 balance. And they're both great for meat. And one's a trophy, one's more of a trophy for the hunter, but one's also managing that population so that we're not getting too many where the farmer goes, all right, let's get a helicopter in and we'll, get rid of them completely. And that's complete meat wastage. They're not going to come back to that.
And that's what I was trying to get with where I started with it, was that exact sort of take on it.
Okay. Because I was going to say with females, people forget that that's a mouth to feed. And then the more females there are, the more young males that can be breeding because they don't have to fight for that right to breed her. Whereas if everyone's just shooting older stags, it's like, it's great because you are contributing to sort of, you know, they've had their reproductive sort of stage. They're falling off the edge of that curve where they're now going to sort of either fight and get killed. They're going to starve, not survive a winter in Alaska or whatever. There are those factors, but it is also sort of selecting for a very small percent of that population. Like stags, old mature stags make up a tiny percent compared to hinds or females of any age.
Yeah.
And that's where I think as hunters, we've probably got to start, you know, trying, like natural... In the wild, it's generally 50-50, like in terms of male, female being born on the ground. And then you can see in altered areas where there are a lot more males. A lot more females than males just because we're selecting for them.
Yeah, with higher hunting pressure, like, you know, if you imagine that you've only got, just say you've got 50 deer and there's 25 bucks or stags and there's 25
that's my bad. I should have been saying
stags.
There's
bucks, like there's fellow bucks and, you know. But there's 25 stags and 25 does. We'll just say if every year, like naturally 5 die every year, right? Bucks, like stags and does.
Yep.
But just say on top of that, every year you're shooting 3 stags, like trophy stags, to say off your property. Well, you know, after 5 years, you've killed an extra 15%. So you've 15 animals that are the males. So like you end up with a proportion where you probably have about 15 stags and 35 females, because they're always going to meet that nutritional quota of, like, you know, if you can support 50 animals in the land, they'll have 50 animals, right? If it's, you know, and then if it's drought, it might drop back and whatnot. But what ends up happening is, in terms of like genetics, well, you've got 15 bucks or stags and now you've got 35 does. Instead of it, if it was 1-to-1, the stags have to fight more to actually breed that female. Whereas if you've got, just say, a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1, the genetics, like you might have inferior animals, whether it be physically or their horns are worse, or they're like
whatever
selective factor is at the time. Like often in the animal kingdom, obviously it's going to be like ability to survive. So their ability to survive and thrive might be inferior to another one, but there's hinds or does or whatever, like, you know, there's ewes just sitting there, and so they breed, and so that natural selection actually occurs at a really, like, a lot slower rate. And you start seeing herds or mobs or, you know, areas that actually have really poor genetics, and they'll carry traits of crappy animals, like not only physical traits, but also like antler traits as well of animals, and that's purely because the ratios are out and people have been selectively culling, or not selectively culling, like selectively hunting more males, and they're sort of like, oh, if I keep the females, then, you know, I'll attract more males and stuff, which is, it's sort of, those males come back there because that's what they do. Like it's not the case.
Well, you look at commercial roo shooting, you basically don't shoot those. People do shoot big ones sometimes, back when the market was quite good as shit now, but like bucks, pretty much flat out. And everything from 16 kilos to 40 kilos dressed out. So that makes, like that's just got my mind ticking, because I never thought of it from that way either. Yeah, which is really cool.
We got asked actually recently, because we've just come back from a guided hunt where we had a few hunters, and they were asking, you know, about the genetics and all this sort of stuff. But then there's definitely like so many other factors. So nutrition's probably equally as big as genetics.
Oh, for sure.
If you're on a property that has poor soil or poor pastures or whatever, those animals are never going to meet their genetic potential. Same as if you've got too many animals and it's overstocked.
Well, they're mixing cattle and also,
exactly
like,
right. So
I was meant to be 6'10", I just wasn't fed right.
I think we sort of like
and built like a bodybuilder.
So like it's without surveying it. To
we
an
don't know
in-depth level, like it's hard to make that.
And that's where in Australia we don't have enough wildlife biologists, especially because all deer in Australia are introduced in feral. We don't have that funding where they're our whitetail as such in America.
You have to have people studying, like,
there is
like grazing as well, like commercial grazing as well.
There's someone that's doing a study up here with chital deer that's about to get released, but there's there is biologists starting, like they're looking at sambar deer in like the Alpine National Park and the effects on that, because they've done some severe culling, you know, fallow deer and reds down in the Hunter Valley, because like I guess whenever deer numbers get out of control, like the DPI want to go in there and sort of survey and see, they want to shoot the shit out of everything, but they want to, it's not actually that
I know what
either.
you mean, like surveys,
they want to do surveys to like see, like they've done one on tar.
What shrubs are they eating? What's
like,
their range of
what's
a big
their actual
stag?
effect, and like, but also like what's carrying capacity, like, you know, there's it's good seeing like 300 of whatever you're trying to shoot. Like everyone loves that, but it's also like you got to think about it. Like it's not sustainable and it's not good for the environment either. And if you're trying to shoot a trophy animal, well, wouldn't you be better off having 100 animals and there being a surplus food for those animals? So whatever your animal, like whatever your stag is, that's going to meet its nutritional potential, and plus it's going to have like, you know, as soon as that fawn hits the ground, like they've done studies in the US where if there's good feed on the ground, when that fawn hits the ground, whether it's a male or a female, like it's going to grow more and be bigger.
In utero, if
for
the
later on in
female,
life, like,
while pregnant, has access to really good feed, that fawn, before it's even born, has like such a greater increase.
Well, it's no different to like human mothers
that's right.
eating properly for breast milk.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
If you're smoking and drinking, baby's going to be, you know, not as healthy.
you
Most
a vet
likely. I'm studying.
Oh yeah,
So I'm in
as a vet too.
fourth year.
Yeah,
He's
shit.
nearly there.
So
He's got 2 years. He's
Yeah,
getting
right.
there.
So let's
Actually, let's start tackling some of these questions because I feel like you're gonna.
no. What questions?
Oh, just before when you're like, I got a couple.
Oh,
of
I've got
questions.
heaps. I've got heaps. I don't even know if we'll get to them all. But one I do have is, while we're on the sort of semi-controversial topics,
I love it.
feral animals.
Yeah.
So deer, pigs, buff, all that sort of shit. What's your standpoint on that from a conservation perspective? And one example I want to just throw in the mix is Hawaii, right? The pigs on Hawaii, the general, I'm going on like a general vote, the local Hawaiian people said the pigs have been there for as long as they've been there. So the pigs are local, but they're introduced.
Yeah, but yeah.
yeah, I
Do you know what I mean? I'm just throwing that as like a cog turner. So
For me, it's like they're here now. They're a resource. In my opinion.
So you're like going, okay, it's been and done. It's happened.
Yeah.
They're here to stay.
But it's like
It's about
for this
managing it.
reason though. Like you look at our Northern Territory Coburg population of bangtang buffalo.
Yeah.
Bangtang, sorry, bovine species. Where they're from in like southeast sort of Asia.
Rennie's having a fucking video conference.
I love you,
Loud.
Mum.
Where the bangtang are from, they're like don't quote me, but they're
Indonesia?
either endangered or threatened. Like they're as a species, they're sort of
As a
vulnerable.
whole, like a global species.
Whereas
Is that what you're saying?
Well, here we've got a great
we've got surplus. They're
Yeah,
shooting them, hunting, guiding for them, but it's a managed sort of species,
Bird.
of population at the moment in Australia.
By who?
By traditional owners. There's people like
NLC.
there's like guides with leases, and they pay the traditional owners.
So there's
But
like
that
quotas for them
hurt.
and shit.
Yeah, exactly.
For a feral
and
animal.
they're expensive.
Yeah. Oh,
like
yeah.
Yeah, right.
But without trophy fee sort of money, those deer would just get those bangtang would just get wiped out by a chopper because they're in Coburg National Park, which is, you know, like it's Australian land that is obviously vulnerable to this large, heavy-hoofed sort of bovine. So there's no point having them there really, because it's like we could have a black and white opinion of it and say, yeah, they're introduced, get rid of them all.
Do you think it's
But then-
location specific?
Well, in this
in Australia?
I think so, yeah. But in this instance, if we got rid of them all and then the population in Southeast Asia, I think it might be Indonesia, had some disease go through there's an extinction of bangtang. Whereas now we've got this hidden population in Australia that is economically viable. It's not really hurting anyone as such. It can be, and that's where it's not hurting anyone as such at the moment. It's giving the Indigenous traditional owners income through, you know, running guides and safaris on their land. Those animals are being managed on the parkland.
I thought it was a sneeze.
Being managed on that park, and hunters are paying upwards of $10,000. Like we get US people coming over to hunt them, and that's as a trophy sort of as a trophy hunt.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it sort of is maintaining this viable population of an animal that's threatened back in their sort of homeland.
Makes
and it's
sense.
the same
So
as what's going on with tar in New Zealand.
Yeah.
I think in terms of being like a feral animal, it's like I've spoken to people about it before, and it's
Do you think people don't look at it from the
Cows
broader
are
perspective,
feral
like
in
it's
Australia?
yeah, well, that's
Like-
right. Like it's
Do you think
it's a prickly topic. If someone said to me that, like, if you could flick your click your hands and get rid of all the feral pigs in Australia, would you do it? And I was like, well, probably not. Like, because I personally,
Are you coming from a hunting perspective though when you say
that's
that?
the thing. So that's the thing. Like,
So
I'm
what
doing
if-
it from my personal
I would.
bias.
Right, so I'll
Yeah.
give you an ultimatum. So say there's the same species that are native, and then there's all these feral species that are currently still here, and they're basically the same animal. One
See,
lot's-
we're twins,
Yeah.
and I differ on that opinion. For pigs, I'd flick my fingers and go, yep, get rid of pigs from Australia.
Okay. So what if there's native, let's go pig. So there's native species of pig.
Yeah.
There's a feral species of pig.
Yeah.
Regardless of conservation sort of values, like area specific conservation values, would you click your fingers and wipe the feral ones if you could? With
If
still
they're
giving you
competing with the native ones and
Yeah.
hindering that, yeah,
Probably.
I would, because it's sort of that's
so
where.
you'd look at it from that way though.
But that's
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
and
all-
that's
You wouldn't just
where-
go, I want.
So my thing
I
for the
wanna hunt
pigs is
both.
I'm selfish because I really enjoy hunting pigs and I
Yeah.
enjoy eating them and like enjoy being able to like go and get my own wild
Yeah.
pork. I think it's something that needs to be managed a lot better, and I think that like the populations in some locations is way too high. But that's where like in terms of feral animals, like I think like I see and deal with on a daily basis like hoofed animals in our domestic animal industry. Like of all the animals that we eat, and in my opinion, they do significantly more damage than our wild. Like we're literally changing the landscape to manage agricultural systems.
Yeah, we've done that for
So
thousands of
like
years, yeah.
I think as long as we manage our wild feral animal populations in a similar way, like I wouldn't
that's
necessarily.
where, personally, like I consider feral pigs to be a pest, whereas
Yeah.
I consider.
So what makes them different to buff though?
I was going to say, whereas I consider like deer as such to be like a game species that can be much more of like a resource.
Yep.
Just based on, from what I've seen, like pigs are vectors for a lot more diseases and things, which our agriculture, like, so in my opinion, it's like, is our agriculture like economy, business going anywhere? No, cows will always be in Australia from now on.
Yeah.
Unless something drastic happens like
Yeah.
100 years from now, whatever. But if it's out of deer and pigs, I'd much rather have deer. I think the bush can support deer in Australia a lot better than pigs. I think
yeah,
they're just a
sure.
lot more sort of environmentally damaging. I don't think there's
I know
as
what you
much of an economic return. Like this is me just thinking
Yeah, yeah.
very critically.
Yeah,
that's fine.
And that's where if I could, I'd be like, yeah, I think I would get rid of
Yep.
pigs.
So what
Yeah.
about buffalo though? Because they've got a
Well,
like
that's so
the
buffalo,
same,
like,
if not more.
Additionally, like just to chip in, my last two, like, the thing I thought about as well though is like if we decide to click and eradicate all pigs from Australia, it's like at what stage? It's like okay, we've now eliminated one feral animal from Australia. Where do you then?
It's
start
not gonna
draw-
happen.
Well,
It's not
it's not going to
realistic.
happen. But it's
But that's
like,
what I'm saying,
where do
if
you
you
then
could-
draw the line? Like now,
Yeah,
well,
I'm just
now
trying to
you've
get
drawn
the
up-
cogs turning. Like,
Yeah,
like
definitely.
all of this is just like theoretical shit, and there's
like
so many
because you've just
variables to
mentioned
think
buffalo.
of.
You've just mentioned buffaloes, which obviously, being a hoofed animal, like they have a lot of effects in
Yeah.
the waterways in the NT and whatnot. It's
Yep.
like, okay, do we then look at the buffalo? And then you go, okay, well, then you've got,
Where does it stop?
then you go, okay, well, then we go rabbits.
Yeah,
Then
so
you
we're
go,
just
okay,
having
then we go
we're
hares, then we
imagining
go-
now
But
we've got a
again,
magic
I'd
wand and we
probably
can just
click-
wipe
Oh,
out
yeah,
any
like I'm
species off.
talking,
Yeah,
yeah.
But again, I'd probably click fingers, and if you could get rid of rabbits, I'd be like, yep, no worries. But this is all me personally.
Yeah.
yeah.
But
And
it's
if
just
you
it's
like-
as
coming
they
from-
do compete. Like
Yeah.
a deer doesn't compete as much with a bilby.
yeah. So you're coming
Whereas-
from a
Conservation.
for the
Yeah,
for
'cause
the greater good, you'd wipe pigs and rabbits, say, or is it because
Magically,
you
like-
you prefer hunting deer more
No,
than
no.
hunting
I just
pigs?
think looking at where the sort of market is with, I'm a like passionate environmentalist hunter where I do hunt. Like there are some properties they say, these deer are just damaging our property. Come and shoot them and literally be indiscriminate, kill everything. And we obviously take the meat, but it is like culling animals and removing them from that area because they're doing so much damage.
Yep.
Pigs, deer, buffalo, any feral animal does that, has
Yep.
that potential. Foxes on chook pens, all this sort of
Yep.
stuff. Whenever they're impacting humans and us, and it's economically like a bit of a burden, that's where it takes more importance. And that's where I think with feral pigs and more of like an agriculture, like selfishly, it's like, yeah, I love hunting feral pigs, but for the good of Australia and like our agricultural economy, it's like if this is all magical
Yeah, yeah.
scenarios, but if you could get rid of feral pigs from Australia, I'd be like, yeah, that's a thing that I'd pretty like confidently say, yeah, get rid of feral pigs,
Yeah.
just because of how bad they can be for the environment.
Yeah, and they're probably the main. They're
Whereas-
probably
Like
they're
them and rabbits
fucking
would
everywhere.
definitely-
Whereas deer,
Yeah.
especially lately, like going back into that trophy hunting, there are, and this is like very specific for me because I'm a guide now, where this property owner is one of very few in the district that historically, up in North Queensland, out of Charters Towers, there's Chiddle Deer traditional herd that has been there for nearly 140 years or something like that. Like late 1800s, they were released.
Yep.
So that's like been there for a long time. Not that much longer. Less than cattle and that. So it's like when people start talking about culling all these animals, these property owners can earn an awesome income, better than raising a steer for 4 or 5 years. And then selling that at the market, like through trophy
and still
fees and
contribute
hunting.
to conservation in a general sense.
And that's where I think as long as all these like populations are managed, and that's what I'm doing now, and like I'm a bit of a steward and caretaker of this property. But one of the stakeholders is the clients. They obviously want to see mature animals. So that means I can't have everyone blasting away all these deer. But at the same time, the population increases. And the property owner goes to me, mate, we've got too many deer. This is a working cattle farm. We can't have this many. And I've got to go, all right, so that means I'm going to take some does out of the population, take the cull stags and things, or the management deer.
So it's like an in-house conservation
It's literally
effort.
like cattle. Like
That's pretty cool.
It sounds
you're trying
bad.
it's trying to manage a herd.
Yeah, so
And
you're not
it's-
just going out there with the sole purpose of hunting either.
No, absolutely. I'm trying to make it sustainable.
You're looking at big picture shit. Like you're looking at your business 10 years time.
And it's
but
not even
for
a
the
business,
property owner,
it's
like
just-
if there's been stations out there that historically, like they just got chopper shot recently, but have had
10,000 deer.
more, or like
and
even
now they're all
2,000
dead,
deer.
gone to waste, meat,
Chopper
rotted,
shot.
everything from a
But, like,
helicopter.
even 2,000 deer, in my opinion, is too many to have. Like even these are the large properties that we're hunting on, like 60,000 plus acres. But having 2,000 deer on that property, in my opinion, is too many deer on that property, because at the end of the day, it's a it's a cattle property first, and we're guiding on it and getting a secondary income for the farmer second. So like 2,000 deer, well, that's an extra, just say 300 head of cattle that he could be running. Like, sure, you can manage 500 or 300.
A lot of people down south do it with goats. Like I'm from Charleville, like South West Queensland.
right.
Goats is like fucking big coin, man.
It's not
massive.
Queensland's Dust Bowl.
It's nearly $10
it's
a
still
kilo
Queensland.
for goat meat.
Yeah.
Which previously people were mustering them and shooting them, getting rid of them. And that's like where in some arid environments, goats are probably better off than cattle and sheep. So it's like, why not?
Yeah.
And that's where, unfortunately, they're here to stay. But it's like, we're never going to fix that problem. With feral pigs, we could try and eradicate them.
Yeah.
And it's like cane toads. We tried, we introduced, with cane beetles, we we introduced cane toads. And that's worse than the initial problem. Same as, like all this stuff that we have stuffed up in the past, we try and fix it by doing this short-sighted sort of thing. Whereas now it's like, in my opinion, and this is as a hunter, but someone who also loves deer in general and stuff, I really respect pigs. And it's like, there's some properties I've been to that run less cattle now because they charge hunters and have shares on the property for hunters to come up and camp. And that they earn more money through drought times and whatever through hunting pigs than their cattle can turn over in a year.
Yep.
So it's just,
feral,
it's sort of like,
so you like,
where do you draw the line? Unfortunately,
the silver lining sort of.
Everyone's going to be different. We're twins and we have a different perspective on whether pigs should be.
I feel like
there.
either way, your opinions, though, like your conservation
there's no
perspective is
right
still the same. You know what I mean?
I think as long as you can have a discussion, and that's even in regards to the trophy hunting, the whole debate of like hunting, fishing, all of it. Like I feel like I'm happy to have a discussion with anyone that ever wants to talk to me about anything that I'm personally related to, as long as it's a discussion. If someone's just going to sit there and blatantly just talk at me and be like, I can't even talk. You're a bloody murderer. Then it's like,
your
I just
opinion's
give up.
made up.
Like, I just give up.
Yeah.
I'm like, where if someone's like, oh, excuse me, like, especially we get a lot of messages about the cooking side, because it's like,
we're
going to
get into that later too. I love cooking.
Oh, so do we. But especially around the cooking side, like, and cooking wild game and all that type of stuff. Like, we get so many messages, like almost daily, from people being like, oh, can you explain this? And then you actually start talking about hunting, and they're like, God, we just thought it was just something completely different.
Yeah,
and
that's where like I feel like you grow as a person. Like I found, and I like, just because like I come from a small country town, and like that's like when you're growing up, sort of that's sort of all that's there, and like a lot of people just are born there, grow up there, die there, type thing. And then I've travelled heaps, like overseas is a big one, and then a fair few places around Australia, and lived in different places and stuff. And I feel like that's where you gather like all of these values. And I take a lot from like, I think like Joe Rogan's one of the most inspirational people on earth.
Well, he put it in the spotlight, and he can talk openly about any topic.
Yeah, anything, like absolutely anything. And he sits on the fence, and gets information from everywhere, and then he makes his own opinion regardless of anything else.
Yeah, and his
And I respect
opinion is
that,
often different to the person that's sitting next to him that he's mates with.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean a single thing to him because everyone has that right to be,
Yep.
you know, an opinion is literally personal. It's
Yeah.
yours is different to mine, whose is different to my brother's.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so sort of valuable and rich, is because no one thinks the exact same as someone else.
Yeah.
And as you said, Joe Rogan's just, it's refreshing.
Yeah.
And he doesn't push anything on people.
No.
It's just, you know, even in his intros to his podcast where he's like, hey, fuckers, you know, I tried this and I liked it. Doesn't mean you have to, but if you do, check it out. Like, it's refreshing and it's cool. Like, I love it. Some people probably get butthurt and offended by it because that's the world at the moment.
Yeah.
But what you were saying.
I think the issue at the moment is a lot of people think that their opinion, like what I was saying before, it's like
uneducated opinions is the problem. I reckon.
A lot of people think that their opinion is fact, and then they would tell that to enough people, and then all of a sudden, like in their mind, that's fact. And they're 100% right. And like if it's and that's the thing. Like a lot of the time, because I'm like a vet, like it's when I have discussions with people, it's like I try and base my conversations off science. Like I try and base it off factual things that I know. Like I'm not talking bullshit. Like I'm talking like true hard facts. And so like I want to have a conversation about stuff. But when people are pulling out random stuff that they think are facts, but it's just there. And I'm not. We don't have to be talking about hunting. Like we could be talking. Literally. But like we could be talking about like, you know, cloud formations.
Yeah.
Like I don't really care. But like as long as you're telling me facts, like you've got my attention. But like when people start telling, opinions that they think are true because their hairdresser told them when they were getting a blow wave.
Yeah.
That's. I only say that because my dad's a hairdresser.
Is he?
Yeah.
Shout out to Dad.
Shout out to Nico.
That's
Shivo
nice.
Hairdressing. But yeah.
Cut and colour, $25.
Yeah, that's right. Oh shit! Run down there. Go. No, oh Jesus.
Brought to you by.
Yeah, that's right. $25.
Sponsor of the podcast is.
So like some of the stuff that he'll come back and tell me, I'll just be like, Dad, what are these people telling you? Like, that is complete
I feel like
bullshit.
Like, my old man was the same. He was exactly the same with that sort of shit. And I feel like it's for the better. It's slowly phasing out.
Oh, for
and
sure.
I feel like because ignore COVID, but like more people are being able to travel now. More people want to travel, and more people want to do all this stuff. And I feel like there's better ways of communicating with people from different locations and shit now, so you can get a broader perspective on stuff. That's what I think anyway. I feel like there's a lot less, unless I'm blind to it because I just don't entertain that shit anymore. I feel like it's definitely improved since
I think a
the old
massive
days.
thing is like the circles you surround yourself with,
Yep.
but also your source of information. And like we try and surround ourselves with, you know, passionate people who like love being outdoors, whether it's fishing, spearing, hunting, photography, whatever, just like hiking, all this sort of stuff. So that's where a lot of our effort and information comes from. And it's easy, like it sort of flows naturally. Whereas
that's what I'm trying to base this sort of brand or this company, its culture on, is that. Because like I can, like you boys are a perfect example, like haven't met you still today, but we can sit and have like decent, hearty conversations.
Oh, for sure.
Like I've known you for a while, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I feel like every single time that like especially this podcast, which is the main reason why I do it, is I get to connect with people that like there's I don't know, I can pick 10 people off my podcasts that I've done that I've just picked up and I felt like I've known them for 10 years.
And that's all this is a conversation with people that are just like, we're interested about you, you're interested about us. And then it's just, you know, our hobbies and that have brought us here together.
Yeah.
But now it's just like, general conversation, you know, willingness to sort of learn and understand stuff that we don't.
Yep.
And
Let's take a break. I've got some more questions.
All right.
Bit less controversial topics. I want to talk about some hunts and shit and some cool shit, and then I also want to talk about some of this. What's this cooking? Hungry Hunter.
Hungry Hunter.
I want to suss that and some cooking shit. Let's do that.
Good.